So my question is around, I guess, in terms of a non-monogamous relationship where maybe needs aren't all being met, and exploring outside of that in terms of power exchange. So I wanted to ask you kind of what is that you mentioned about a recommended structure to kind of get in the right mindset for that. Could you talk us through a little bit about that and kind of where would be the best place to start with that?
Yeah, so I just have a few questions before going into that. So you're in, if I could just ask personal questions, I'll just trust you to manage your boundaries with how much you want to answer. I'm just not super clear.
Reminder about boundaries.
Yeah. Yeah. So it sounds like you're in a partnership where it's openish and you're looking to get some of your needs met outside of the partnership, and you're looking for advice on how to navigate that.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So I would get with your primary person and just ask them, where their boundaries are with that. If they feel like, can you be sexual with someone else? Can you be romantic with someone else? What might the boundaries be? Like for some people, they're like, I don't care if you have sex, but just don't fall in love with someone else. So getting really clear on like where their boundaries are, so that when you're navigating it and dating other people, that you can just share what you are and aren't available for there. And I would say just like being in full transparency on apps, that can work really well. There's also Feld, F-E-L-D, I think that's what it's called, is an app for people who are more non-monogamy and more open about their desires and needs and what they're looking and how they're wanting it to be met. And it's just about being in full transparency about like what you are juiced up about, what you're wanting to explore, and where you're authentically at in that. So maybe this is your first time that you're ever exploring a relationship outside of your primary partnership, and just being very clear and honest about that, so that people can have full consent as they're entering into a relationship. I find a lot of the times people are not disclosing like with full transparency soon enough. So I think, of course, like we all have our own shells of when we feel comfortable to share vulnerable information, but I think it's important when dating to just be in full transparency as quick as you can. And then I would say with your primary partnership, like let's say you go on a date, then what do they need for like aftercare? So with BDSM, there's a question about aftercare after a scene that both people get. What do you need? Does it go in any steps? And do you need it by me or someone else? And that's kind of a nice thing to have just in everyday life. If you have like an intense interview or a date with a new lover, what is aftercare that you might need both for yourself and for your partner, and what might your partner need in that? So like maybe a text right after the date, like as soon as you leave, or connection and cuddles and talking about what did and didn't work and how they felt while you were on the date and how you felt and all of that. So I think like a lot of check-ins and just communicating with as much transparency and honesty when your nervous system is not activated, that's really important. So if you're noticing that people are like that you're getting triggered or your partner's getting triggered, and make sure that you take 5 minutes, take some breaths, or regulate together, breathing together, taking some space, going on a walk and coming back together to renegotiate and talk about things. That's all where I would begin as you're like peeking your head out and looking at the things. Does that feel kind of complete-ish, or do you have any other follow-up questions?
There'll probably be a follow-up, but I'll write it in the chat.
Thank
you.
Thank you for the question.
Yeah, thank you, Emma. Okay, so we have questions here in the chat. What parts of yourself you can heal with help of BDSM play? Probably a lot. Can you please point to some examples?
Yes. So like I was mentioning with shadow work, like any shadow aspects of ourselves can be integrated through BDSM in a sort of drama therapy type of way. I find BDSM to be very helpful with anything shame related, with anything that might be related to power dynamic struggles. So with the way that our sexuality is wired, we like repetition with agency around our core traumas, or repetition with role reversal. So sometimes people like they tend to find that what turns them on a lot in intimacy might be related to a trauma they have, and then they feel freaked out and shamed about that. Like, ugh, is it weird that I for me, talking literally about myself, oh my God, it's so weird that I'm obsessed with overalls because my stepdad dragged me across my house when I was 6 years old by my overalls, and now I'm obsessed with them. I have this fetish of overalls. And I felt I was so shamey of myself of like, that's so weird that I'm into that. But that's actually really normal. And most of our bodies are wired that way. And so like, I love to, I don't like repetition with agency with overalls. However, I love it with repetition role reversal. I love it if someone's wearing overalls and I love grabbing them and pulling them towards me and kissing them. Like that, I really like that. I feel really turned on by that. So there's a lot that BDSM can use to help heal. It's just about bringing as much awareness and mindfulness into our psyche, our traumas, and being really compassionate and loving to ourselves, and negotiating all of that and being as transparent in our communications as we can. And there's not an exact science to this. It's definitely exploration and discovery of the self and of others and intimacy. But that's just some examples. So for example, if I were to find in a session with someone that they have a shadow of anger, what I would do is I would do a consensual container of some type of scene where they are embodying anger. And that is a way that BDSM can be healing, because it's this part of themselves that they've never had access to, that they've never felt that they could authentically be, because maybe anytime that they got angry, their parents shut down, their caretaker shut down, their lover shut down, and they felt like they couldn't be angry, even though that they have so much rage inside of them. So what I can do is I can hold and create a container where I'm like, not only is your anger allowed here, I'm also think it's fucking awesome, and it turns me on. So you better fucking get angry. And then I can poke them and like help to get them to be alive in their anger. And I hold that container and allow that to be there. So, and it turns me on. It really does. So yeah, I feel hopefully that answers the question, that it can be very healing in so many different ways.
Yeah. This reminds me, from my experience, that like not getting enough attention from my dad, like as much as I wanted, and then having my partner who's dominant, like who's dominating, like seen as a daddy figure, and like be nourished by that. So that like, you know, like to receive that, something that I was liking. So yeah.
Exactly. And how would it feel for you to be in a scene where you're literally worshipped and just like have like multiple men there just worshiping you, treating you like a goddess, giving you so much attention? How do you want it? Do you want it this way? Do you want it that way? Do you want it this way? Would that feel like nourishing and hot and healing for you to
Oh
just
my
have so many
God.
people just giving you all of the attention?
Yeah, okay. You're good. You're getting right there.
Yeah.
That's something I haven't experienced yet, but would be really hot.
Yeah, that would be really hot. I would love to see that happen.
How can you revisit boundaries and rebuild trust when they have not been heard and or respected in play space? Ooh.
Ooh, that's a hard one.
It is.
I always say boundaries need to have consequences. If someone isn't able to respect boundaries, then there needs to be a retraction, a consequence for that boundary not being acknowledged or heard or respected. So maybe like you can't play with other people until I feel that there's trust that rebuilds with us. And trust is something that happens over time. Brene Brown always talks about this. It's like the small moments. It's like these, in her newest book, I'm forgetting what it's called, Daring Greatly or something.
Yeah.
She's talking about with her daughter, how she was asking her daughter, how do you trust your friends? And she's like, it's these small moments when like I tell someone a secret and they don't tell it to someone else. Or, you know, when I say a thing that feels sensitive and then they're not repeating it in front of others. So it's like, little things like that rebuild trust, and it's only really up to you to figure out what helps you to feel a container of safety. I know for me, I have a dear friend who helps me feel supremely safe, and what makes me feel safe is being really acknowledged and validated. And when I say, hey, this is important and vulnerable for me, don't fuck it up, for them to not fuck that up. So I'm not sure exactly for you what feels the best for you to rebuild that trust, but I would say if someone violated boundaries, then they have to have consequences to that, which is you can't play with other people until I feel safe in our connection again. That's what I would do. but you'll only know what feels right for you. And I'm really sorry that you had that experience. That sounds really scary and frustrating and disappointing, and probably scary. Like you're scared that that connection might change. So sorry about that.